Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're tackling a career path that piqued a lot of interest from what we've seen. Economic Development Coordinator. Now, I gotta be honest, when I first saw this one, I pictured someone in like a stuffy suit, just analyzing spreadsheets all day in some dimly lit office. But let me tell you, after digging into the research, I was blown away by what these folks actually do.
Yeah, it's definitely a title that doesn't really fully capture all that they do.
Exactly. So let's ditch the preconceived notions and really unpack this, shall we? RoleCatcher, our trusty guide for this deep dive, describes economic development coordinators as, get this, the architects of growth. So they identify opportunities and tackle challenges, analyzing economic trends, and we're talking about things like shifts in employment, industry booms, or even busts, and even how much people are spending. It's like being an economic detective, right? Us
Yeah.
uncovering clues to help communities thrive.
Yeah, and the really fascinating thing is it's not just about, like you said, crunching numbers. This role really plays out across all sectors, from government agencies and nonprofits to private companies.
That's what I thought was so interesting.
Yeah.
It's not just one thing.
Right, and each of those has its own sort of approach and take on economic development.
That's right. One minute you could be collaborating with local businesses to like revitalize a downtown area, and the next you might be working with a renewable energy company, figuring out how to bring green jobs to a rural community.
Yeah,
Talk about variety.
absolutely. Lots of variety.
Speaking of those different work environments, let's like try to paint a picture of what a day in the life of an economic development coordinator actually looks like. Now, I was kind of surprised to learn that a lot of the work happens in a, typical office setting.
Mm.
But
Yeah, there's a but there.
yeah,
It's not your typical, sit in a cubicle farm type of situation.
right, exactly.
RoleCatcher highlights that there is potential for travel, especially for those who are working on projects in rural areas or maybe specialize in like a particular industry.
Okay, so that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Imagine jetting off to a remote coastal town to like help them revitalize their fishing industry,
Right.
or you're headed to like a bustling metropolis to attract tech startups or something.
Exactly. And I think people sometimes forget about you think about economic development, you think about the numbers, you think about, these different industries, but a lot of it is people skills.
Oh yeah, for sure.
A lot of it is about building relationships.
Hmm.
The research talks about collaboration being a key part of the job.
Makes sense.
You're going to be brainstorming with community leaders. You're going to be negotiating deals with businesses. You're going to be presenting proposals to government officials. So it really is about bringing people together to kind of get on board with a shared vision.
Yeah, it sounds like you need to have the perfect blend of analytical thinking, but also that charisma. You need to be able to talk to people.
Absolutely. But also, let's not forget about the tech side of things, too, right? I mean, the research mentioned data analysis as being obviously a big part of this, and RoleCatcher even gave the specific example of GIS software.
Yeah.
And apparently, economic development coordinators use that to, like, map out economic data and really identify areas for growth. It's like having this secret weapon to understand, like, a community's economic landscape.
Yeah, absolutely. And having those tech skills are going to be essential for analyzing trends, for forecasting future growth, and then like we talked about, being able to present that, evidence, compelling evidence to stakeholders and things like that. But I will say one of the things they highlighted in the research, which I thought was interesting beyond the hard skills, was reading comprehension.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Reading comprehension.
Reading comprehension.
Yeah.
They said 68% of economic development coordinators use reading comprehension on a daily basis.
I mean, it makes sense though, right?
Yeah.
Because you're reading all these reports and you got to be able to pull out.
Deeper policy stuff.
Yeah, exactly. You're going through these dense reports, policy documents. You have to be able to absorb that complex information. And then often what you need to do is kind of distill it.
Yeah.
You're distilling it down into these clear, concise recommendations.
Okay, so we've established this role requires like a really unique blend of skills. You got to be analytical, you got to have those people skills, got to be tech savvy, and like a genuine passion for, making communities thrive. But where does it all lead? Like, what does the career trajectory actually look like for an economic development coordinator?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, like with most careers, you start at an entry level position, right?
Right.
But I think what's cool about this field is there's like a pretty clear path upwards. for upward mobility.
Okay.
As you gain more experience, you can start to move into more specialized roles, right?
Mm.
Maybe focusing on a specific industry like we talked about, or really honing in on a particular region.
Right, a role catcher highlighted. Like the senior coordinator position as this really like fascinating one. They made it seem like these guys are like the industry rock stars.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
They're out there presenting at conferences, they're influencing policy decisions, they're jet setting around the globe, trying to like drum up investment. They've gone from just analyzing the trends to actually shaping the future of, economic development.
Yeah. And I think that really speaks to, if you're looking for growth in a career, this has that potential, which is really cool.
Yeah.
It's not like you kind of get into this role and you're stuck there.
Yeah.
You can really, with the right skills and the experience, become, quite an expert and be sought after, I'm sure, in this field.
Absolutely. Now, for anyone listening who's like, all right, I'm sold, how do I get this job? Let's talk about actually landing a job as an economic development coordinator.
Mm.
And who better to guide us than, RoleCatcher? They're kind of like the career experts.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And they have, a lot of really good advice, I would say. One of the things that I thought was interesting that they brought up is they actually have a whole section on using AI for resume tailoring.
Oh, wow.
So apparently this technology, it can actually analyze job descriptions and then it'll like optimize your resume to make sure you're really highlighting those relevant skills and experience for that specific job that you're applying for.
Okay, so on the one hand, that sounds incredibly helpful. On the other hand, it's like, are the robots coming for our jobs already?
Right. I know.
But I mean, honestly, anything that can cut through the noise and like get your application noticed these days, it's probably worth at least looking into.
Oh, for sure. And I think, it really, that's the biggest thing it does is it takes that guesswork out of it,
Yeah.
right? Because it's such a black box sometimes. You're throwing your resume out there and you don't know. So I think this can kind of help you feel a little bit more confident. But one thing I will say is RoleCatcher did a good job of making sure they're addressing, the ethical implications of it, right? Making sure that it's not,
It's not replacing humans completely.
right. You still need to showcase your own unique personality, your qualifications.
Mhm.
It's really a tool. It's like any other tool, right? You got to use it to your advantage.
Exactly. Exactly. So as we wrap up our deep dive here into the world of economic development coordinators, what are some like key takeaways you hope our listeners are walking away with?
I would say, first and foremost, the biggest one is, we talk about this a lot, but look beyond the job title.
Yeah.
Because it sounds kind of, it doesn't sound, I don't know, maybe that exciting when you first hear it, but
Sounds kind of boring.
yeah. But then you get into it and you're like, wow, this is actually a really dynamic career, a really multifaceted career.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we learned it requires such a unique blend of skills. It's not just one type of person that can do this. You got to have all those things.
Mm.
And who knows, maybe the next time you hear economic development coordinator,
Mm.
you're not going to picture that person stuck in the dimly lit office.
Yeah.
You're going to think about, these are the people out there shaping the future.
Right. It's all about perspective. And who knows, maybe some of our listeners now have some other boring sounding jobs that we can look into.
Ooh, I like that. Now, that's an excellent idea. Listeners, if you have any suggestions for future deep dives, be sure to let us know. And a huge thank you to our expert for, coming on the show and shedding some light on this really fascinating career path. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.